So honored that you are coming out to hear from this amazing panel. I mean, these are some superstars in leadership that are helping to tackle, as Sarah was saying, a topic that's near and dear to most of us, and that's of drug addiction, mental health, and public safety. So a little bit of background, why it's so important to me is that I mean, we're seeing this going on, right? If you've driven in and out of Seattle anytime recently or out of King County, you've seen how a lot of the homeless encampments are creeping north here into Edmonds and south Snohomish County. But if you come north or spend any time maybe in South Everett, you're going to also see some of the encampments. And then you can't help but turn on the news and hear about more and more crime that's happening and more people who are dying of fentanyl overdoses. And really for me, it was also very personal. I've got family members who were drug addicts and younger cousins, very, very beautiful young ladies who were overwhelmed with addiction and oftentimes were on the streets, prostituting and obviously getting into the business of selling drugs, which ended up landing them in prison. It was actually the best thing that happened to them, to get clean. And so that kind of colors maybe my belief about enforcing laws that are associated with this. And so one of my cousins who is out of prison, she managed to complete and get her degree from University of Hawaii, and she's doing fantastic. She graduated with top honors, and it's a great success story. So this is very personal. Another thing, if you don't know, I am an Air Force veteran, and in the Air Force, as an officer, I served as a bioenvironmental engineer, where I protected people and the environment from nuclear, chemical, and biological hazards. And as I'm seeing what's happening with the death rates associated with opioid overdose and the health impacts, it has all the characteristics of chemical warfare. I mean, if we were to lay it out on and war game this, we would say we're absolutely being attacked. And so I think the protective, defensive nature that I have as a servant is that we need to tackle this and find out how we protect our loved ones. And just a really quick show of hands, how many people have had family members or have been impacted by addiction? Yeah. This is pretty consistent too with all the doorbelling I've been doing, going door to door and meeting families. And so I felt it was really important that we all come together. Before we get started, we do have an opportunity to hear a firsthand experience about somebody who's gone through addiction. And I would, if Johnny Ray, if you would share your story, I would be honored to help set the tone here.
So my name is Johnny Ray. I was a methamphetamine addict for 20 years. And you know, make no mistake, addiction and public safety affects us all. It affects our families, our friends, our coworkers, our businesses, our community, our cities. So if it doesn't affect you directly, it affects you indirectly, and we are seeing it more commonly in the streets, in the open eye. It's not so hidden. It's up in your face. It's everywhere that you look. Like I said, I was a methamphetamine addict for 20 years. I've been homeless many times. I have struggled. I've eaten out of garbage cans. I've lived in cars. And what really took me to get clean was to address some inner things that are inside of me. It wasn't just enough for me to be clean. I had to work on my morals, and my values, and my integrity, my responsibility. And that's why I'm at these events today. These are absolutely important for us to discuss. They are extremely knowledgeable. We have amazing panel leaders that are willing to talk to us about these things openly, honestly. And I think that if we do more of these things, then we're going to see a bigger change. And thank you for having me.
I've talked to each of these wonderful gentlemen individually and have been blessed to learn so much from them. And that's why I'm really excited to have them all in one place so that you guys can have that same benefit of hearing about what everybody's doing and how they're tackling. I want to introduce Sheriff Fortney. And Sheriff Adam Fortney was sworn in as our Snohomish County Sheriff in 2020. Right? He's been a member of the Sheriff's Office for 24 years, working patrol, K-9, and SWAT. And I was thinking maybe he could share with us, kind of set the scene, that what you're seeing from your perspective in terms of rising crime rates, or, I mean, really in our county, I know King County did declare like a state of crisis recently because of the death rate that keeps going up and up. And if you look at a chart, it's almost a hockey stick type curve. And so I think Snohomish County tends to have like a higher proportion relative to the state. I don't know, maybe you could share with us some of that, or what you're seeing, the crime associated with drug addiction in our county.
Yeah. Two things. First, thank you, Janelle, for having this. Not every person running for office takes the time to put something like this together. It's a big deal, and I give everybody who showed up here tonight a lot of credit for caring enough to sitting in the seat, listen to this panel. Very important conversation to be had. So thank everybody very much for that. And so I have never really been accused of saying King County gets very much right, but I will say they got that right. I have no problem with that. I think it should be an emergency, and we should treat it like an emergency. When I've worked this, I have a different perspective. I come from the streets of Snohomish County. What I mean by that, I've worked the streets. So I'm usually running into people with addiction issues. They may have committed a crime, they may have not committed a crime. And so I've seen that change over the course of my 25 years. When I ran for office in 2019, it was the height of the opioid epidemic and heroin use. We have now seen that morph into heroin is still here, but now fentanyl is front and center. When we were at the height of the heroin epidemic, I wouldn't think it could get much worse, but boy, was I wrong. Fentanyl is worse. We see it. We see it every day in Snohomish County, as you said. And so what I don't want people to think in this room is that the sheriff is here, he's worked the street for 25 years, and I don't know that any one person has the solution to this. I think there's neighborhoods all across our country who are facing this crisis. I don't want people to think I'm here as a law enforcement representative, as your elected sheriff in this county, to think the solution is locking anybody up. I've been accused of that a little bit. I think over the last 2.5 years, I've proven that is not the solution to anything. And I can tell you, through various administrations, probably including mine, we've tried. Airport 99 in South Everett is a mess right now. It's bad. And what I mean by a mess is I feel bad for everybody down there. The business owners, Pinky, who runs Fast Eddie's, I just talked to her last week in person down there. She's frustrated. The leadership at Home Depot was up in my office just last week as well about the same issues. The community down there, the Alderbrook Village, they are not pleased for the most part with the sheriff's response down there, and they just want help. They don't feel like they can leave their homes and walk to whether it's Home Depot or the restaurants at Airport 99 and do so safely. So they call us for that. That's kind of my perspective with this thing. But what I have learned through the 2.5 years in elected office is I've tried to branch out as much as I can. We partner with organizations like Hope Soldiers. I think they do great outreach work in our community. We are public sector, clearly. They are private sector. But I think we have to be partnered in this, because there is not any one solution. You can't point to any police agency in the nation who said, oh, they got it right and they got it figured out. Or you can't point to any one nonprofit or private sector that's got it all figured out. It has to be a partnership. If you leave here with anything from the Snohomish County Sheriff tonight, I want you to know that we are engaged. We believe we are making those partnerships. I don't think we have it completely figured out yet, but we are trying different things. So I just want you to know that there is a place for accountability, and I have no problem talking about that. And by accountability means if a person is facing addiction issues and they do commit a crime against a community member, I am okay with accountability for that person. It has been very difficult since 2020 on with working through the pandemic, caring for our inmates, since we run the 3rd largest jail in the state of Washington in downtown Everett. I think we have a fantastic thing going on there, and maybe we can get into that a little later. I don't want to drag on too much here. But law enforcement is not the solution to this. We simply are usually the first people who come across someone in crisis, and we are all looking for more and more available ways to help them if we can. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Another question, how has kind of the Blake decision changed in the last, over the last year and a half?
So the Blake decision is the Washington State Supreme Court Blake decision. It came out of Spokane County, and it reached the Supreme Court. And it was a young lady who had, I forget what it was either cocaine or meth in her pants pocket, and she said, "These aren't my pants." Well, law enforcement kind of chuckles at that because we're told that all the time. We go, yeah, okay. And well, the Washington State Supreme Court bought off on that, and they approved her appeal, which overnight legalized drugs in the state of Washington. That's not an understatement. I'm not just saying that because I do disagree with the decision. It's actually what happened. And so the legislature has had a chance to fix that. Their fix was that you, when you come across somebody with a personal possession amount, so we're not talking drug dealers, you'll have to refer them to services 2 times. Really, in theory, I'm not opposed to that. What I think I've learned in the last 18 months or so, it just isn't working, you guys. It's just not working. What we find, and I can only speak to Snohomish County, is that people have been referred to services 10, 15, 20 times. It's not 2. And again, locking people up who are addicted to drugs is not the issue. But I'll tell you what, I've talked to enough people since I've been elected sheriff that if that can be their low point, if they can contact one of our mental health professionals in the jail, we start treatment in Snohomish County Corrections. If that can be the thing that gets that person to make that decision for their life, then so be it. The Blake decision has been disastrous, in my opinion.
One of our other guests here is Dr. Gregory Jans, who, again, a great leader in mental health and addiction. And Dr. Jans started the center, a place of hope, did we say 38 years? Is that
38 years ago.
38 years. He is also a best-selling author on the topics and of depression, anxiety, and chemical dependency. The facility that's here in Edmonds is, I mean, it's pretty renowned. I would say it's got an international reputation, is what I've heard. I think a lot of people would like to understand a little bit more. Now, you're probably seeing maybe a lot more clients or a lot more demand for mental health support. I'm kind of curious too, like, what would you say kind of underlying trauma, underlying like kind of coexisting mental health issues with like chemical dependencies? And maybe just touch on like, have you seen this issue grow over the last couple of years?
Yes. Hey, thank you for being here first. And I do have, she mentioned books. There's a book table. Everything on the table is a gift tonight. And we've got books on anxiety and depression, and books I've written on how to help a loved one who's addicted. Before you leave tonight, take one for you or for somebody else, just as a gift. What we're seeing, we're in a mental health, used to be said we're in a crisis. No, we're in a pandemic of mental health issues, at least an epidemic, which means it's a lot of people. There's not the resources to meet the need right now, and the need is increasing. The last 2.5, 3 years have created many different issues. Anxiety is the #1 diagnosis in our country. Anxiety. That's above heart disease, cancer. It's the most common diagnosis that is written. And for a while, we had, talk about supply chain issues. There was a while where there were so many prescriptions being written for a certain anti-anxiety medication that there were supply chain issues. What? Isn't that remarkable? So that's a lot of anxiety, and that's a lot of people in need, followed by depression. And the third thing that's added to this is addiction. We've never seen the addiction rates like we see now. And Sheriff Fortney mentioned the fentanyl. And what we're seeing now is that the drugs kill. And people are dying every day. We don't always hear about it. It's not always logged the right way. But we know that the fentanyl and what's happening with that is a major crisis. So, and I do believe that, and I'm in agreement with what Sheriff Fortney said about it's a team effort. We've got, and there are some nonprofits or some groups that are doing well, but a lot of things we're doing right now are not working well. They're not working. In some instances, in my opinion, we've made some issues worse. So we're in a crisis. It's going to get worse. I mean, I'm not bringing necessarily good news, but we're going to see things get worse before they get better. And we've got to shut off the fentanyl from the southern border, and we're going to see more deaths. What we see so far? Last year, I looked up the numbers. We had 525 deaths likely from fentanyl in Snohomish County. The number's probably higher. Okay, Snohomish or Yakima County was the #1 on the death rate. So this is taking people's lives, and we're seeing suicide rates go up. our 12 to 17-year-old kids are in a crisis. Suicide is the second leading cause of death across the country for this age group. And so we've got to look at what's going on, and we need to work together on this. It's really easy when this is going on to point fingers and so forth, but we've got to work together to begin to resolve this. Addiction is increasing.
Yeah. Thank you. Could you?
That wasn't necessarily the good news report.
No, hey, I'm glad you brought up the numbers because I have them too. You mentioned to me once before that I guess kind of during lockdowns and COVID, you were on a lot of like phone calls with providers, and you mentioned that maybe there were some hiccups in payments that ended up like closing a few doors.
So during the pandemic, I'm on this call with the Department of Health and this call, and there's weekly calls. And the providers across our state, at one point, we had 72 providers that stopped providing services. What?
Yeah.
At the peak of well, not necessarily the peak, but in the heat of the crisis, and the biggest thing on these calls were, we're not getting paid. We're not getting paid. We can't keep the doors open. And these are places that had state contracts. Some of those places have never reopened. So the need is greater than the ability to provide the service or the help.
So it sounds like something we really should have our legislators prioritize, maybe at state level.
Well, I see but I see today, it came out today. Hey, yeah. we just got $29 million. No, yeah, we got $29 million just now for homeless and behavioral health.
Yeah.
What's going to happen with that money? That just came out today. We got $29 million.
Yeah.
Well, it's the pandemic recovery spending plan.
Well.
So what's going to happen with that money? Are we going to buy more hotels and people in old hotels and leave it at that?
Yeah. Right.
That's another issue.
You guys may or may not know, here in our county, they just purchased 2 hotels. And maybe that's actually a really good topic because it seems that while the concept is to provide wraparound services, there's really no expectation of being in treatment if you're suffering from addiction and being in these hotels. And some of the things, I've heard from many people, and here on this panel as well, that a lot of these hotels get very destroyed inside. And when you have drug addicts using in the hotels, then that makes it completely unsafe for those who are sober, who need that shelter. I actually talked to a woman who's in bioremediation. She keeps going to the same hotels in Seattle to clean up a lot of the human waste that's in there. And so that's kind of on our taxpayer dollars. So I think one of the things we'll probably get to discussing tonight, like what's just some common sense approaches to how we help shelter people and bridge gaps, which really brings me to Mayor Nearing, who, you've been mayor since 2010 in Marysville, and you've got a strong private sector business background and just great leadership throughout all of Snohomish County and the state, actually. What I found really great about why I wanted to talk to you the first time was because you seem to be nationally renowned for bringing a city to the common sense approach of jail or treatment if you're going to, commit a crime. And I think most people pretty much agreed with it. And I had learned about your approach probably a little after watching Seattle is Dying. So that was really interesting. So if you could share a little bit about how that program was successful, and then maybe some of the things that maybe, if you had any setbacks recently.
Yeah, thank you, Janelle. Thanks for putting this on, too. I think this is fantastic that you're doing that. And give her a hand. I was very impressed when I first met Janelle when she was putting her campaign together, and we need more of that thinking in Olympia. So in Marysville, I think, we start from the paradigm. Kind of my philosophy was that we have developed, particularly in the Puget Sound, a really warped sense of compassion. This idea that, hey, if somebody's on drugs, they're a complete victim, which I don't say that they're not a victim, but So we're going to try and get them some help, but we're not going to push them too hard. And if they want to live outside in the park or under a bridge, and if they need to keep shooting up heroin, that's fine. We'll give them a clean needle and a safe place to shoot it up, and all of that nonsense. And I'm embarrassed to say it's nonsense, because think about how warped sense of compassion you have to watch people die under a bridge with a needle in their arm. And this idea that we're going to make it more comfortable for you to do the very thing that's probably going to kill you, and that's probably wiped out every good relationship and every job and every good thing in your life that you've ever had. We're going to encourage that somehow. So what we said is, we're going to go down this path of a navigator team or embedded social worker team, which we did this several years ago when it was kind of still a little bit of a head scratcher, at least in police departments. And I talked to my police chief, and we did it. We said we're going to give this a good go, and I think the key is hiring the right social worker that has a little bit of a tough edge to them, that's not going to get buffaloed by some of these folks. And so we sent them out into the woods and into the parks and everywhere, and tried to establish relationships with people in our community. And we had a real problem, a growing problem. It was not uncommon for me to drive home from a city council meeting at 9:30 or 10 at night and see multiple people wandering the streets howling at the moon or passed out on a heroin addiction high. And so we sought to clean that up. I was having a lot of single moms that were really like, gosh, I go fill up gas at Safeway, and I've got somebody, big guy, standing behind me trying to get money. I got 2 kids in a car seat in a car, and I'm like, what do I do? That's not acceptable. And so anyway, our team went out. I've been out with them. They're awesome at what they do, truly compassionate. They'll have 5, 6 meetings with these folks. We took one young man out to breakfast at McDonald's. They'll take others to Starbucks, wherever. Get a relationship going so they have a reasonable chance to say yes. But our thing in Marysville is, and I think we share this with Sheriff Fortin. He's doing a great job on this similar type of program in the county, and actually we got a lot of help from the county with our program. It was it's a great partnership. The idea was, if you won't accept help at some point, we will prosecute the crimes. And that's just the way it works. So we'll give them a reasonable amount of time, but the minute they think, you know what, it's just a continual, hey, yeah, come back maybe next week, our team will say, look, this is it. You got 24 hours to get into a treatment center, or we will prosecute the illegal trespassing, the car break-ins, the shoplifting at Fred Meyer, all of it. And we'll put you in jail. As the sheriff said, it's not a great option for any of us. It's expensive. It's not great for you. But what we're not going to do is allow you to continue to stay out here breaking into cars, feeding a drug habit until you die under a bridge in a park one day. And so, and I'll never forget being on a panel in Seattle with 2 other mayors. I won't name them, 2 other mayors to the south. And I explained this program. This was when we first started it 3, 4, 5 years ago. And both of them were like, that's the wrong thing. We will not do that in our community. That's not compassionate. And I said, that's fine. I mean, you can continue to do what you're doing. But I'll tell you right now, when I've shared this on my Facebook chats with our community, I've had people pipe in and type into the chat, people I don't even know, thank God for this program because it got me off drugs. This is the way to do it. I went to jail. I can show you, there's texts I've gotten from spouses of people that have come out of our jail into treatment and are now back working full-time painting, paying child support. And so we know it works. It's tough up front. It is tough love up front. There's no doubt about it. It's no fun to watch someone detox into jail. But as the sheriff said, that's the low point, and then they start building up. And so it's painful at first, but you could talk to our embedded social worker team now. We have a good chunk of our referrals into drug treatment coming out of our jail now. And so, I'm willing to be uncompassionate, if that's what you want to call it, because I believe that's true compassion, is wanting to see someone freed from the addiction. And so that's what we practice in Marysville. And it doesn't mean we're perfect. Like everybody up here said, nobody's got the silver bullet to this thing. But what we have done is make our streets at least, it's not a prevalent problem that you see on every corner now. And you asked if there's been some setbacks, and yeah, we were doing really good. We had, I think, over 150 people through treatment pre this Blake decision. Think about that. In a side, Marysville city of 70,000 people, we had put over 150 people in about a 3-year span through treatment. I'm not talking about the ones that just went into treatment. These were ones that graduated treatment. and had reformed their lives. After Blake, we've seen a great uptick in this back on our streets. In fact, there's a survey I saw this evening from our chief. It's back to the #1 concern of our community. Well, we had ratcheted it way down. And there is no doubt that Blake is the reason for that, or a good chunk of the reason for it. It wasn't even a week after Blake was decided, after this, and the situation was public. Our chief was out in a ride-along with one of our officers. They noticed a car parked up by the train tracks, somebody kind of in there doing drugs, knocked on the window, rolled down the window, and the lady in there, and they said, hey, you can't do that. And she says, oh, yeah, I can, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can give me your warning and then move on. And the criminals know this stuff quicker than you or I do. The word gets out so quickly. They're so emboldened now. And so it's the wrong way to go. We've asked the state legislature to fix it last time. They didn't. It's got to get fixed in '23, or there may be no turning the page.
Yeah. Kind of a sign of the times that,
Yeah.
It's having detox as part of that.
We did our voters. I have one of our council members here, Mark James. Our council sent this out to the voters a few years ago. To ask, hey, do you want to continue doing this? We need a new facility that can house and adequately house this situation with the drug problem. We had an old jail that was built in the 80s, and we were a city of about 10,000. We're 70,000 plus now. And it was a dormitory style jail, so we had a couple of dorms. So what was happening is when we would take these folks in, you got to have a place for them to detox. We'd have to clear a whole dorm of 16 inmates out, which meant we couldn't house inmates, right? Because you've got one in this dorm. I mean, if you had 2 or 3 people in there on drugs, you're out of dorms. So we built this new facility. We actually turned it, it's a whole civic campus, but this was a voter-approved initiative to build this. So now we have a pod system where we can run that. We can bring medical care in, not to the degree that the sheriff does. They do a really great job there with a bigger facility, but we can get them started on this with our new facility. And that wasn't a decision. We just threw it out to the voters, said, if you want it, we'll execute it, but we're not going to force the taxes down your throat. They voted for it. It passed by double digits.
That's really great. Which actually, I kind of want to turn this back to Dr. Jantz. I've been hearing that the fentanyl detox process, maybe you've heard from some of the physicians in your center that it's different and more challenging. So
we should probably just define fentanyl is a synthetic opiate. It's about 100, depending on the mix, about 100 times greater in potency than morphine. So it takes a tiny, tiny, tiny bit to kill you. And so it gets mixed into all kinds, it gets mixed into heroin, gets mixed into other drugs. People don't really know what they're getting. So there is a lot of, it's the #1 cause of accidental drug death in our state. So treating it, opiates are a challenge to treat. And one of the things that we've got to always be aware of is it's different than doing a medical detox with alcohol, and it needs to be medically monitored. But the opiate addiction is so strong that a person will do anything to get that, anything. I have had people en route. I remember a gentleman was calling me from his truck and said, and this is a business guy, he said, if I don't get help, I'm killing myself. I can't handle the intensity of the craving and addiction. So that's what you're dealing with. And unfortunately, he killed himself.
I'm sorry.
Never made it in. So that's what we're dealing with.
All right. Thank you. Another one of leaders in our community is Mike Kersey, who is founder of Courage to Change Recovery Services. And I've spent a lot of time with Mike, a lot of time on the phone, got a chance to do a ride along with him, and he manages to fill in the gaps. So here's this non-for-profit filling in gaps where, and I'm an engineer, so I've been really asking lots of questions, and Mike helped me understand where there's really breakdowns in our systems. And so just even driving people to recovery is like a huge thing. Getting people from point A to point B physically and the logistics of that. And I'm just really honored to have him here tonight and wondering if you could I guess, talk a little bit more about that. Talk about your background and why you're so passionate about helping people get to recovery.
Oh, sure. My name's Mike. So I started this process about 20 years ago. In October of this year, I'll have 23 years clean. So I was doing the same thing that all these guys are doing out on the streets, and sometimes worse. But with that being said, I've been with a number of other nonprofits, with the Hoff Foundation. I've worked with Lindsay Gerke, the Hand Up Project. I mean, just about everybody in Snohomish County. I work with all the detox and treatment centers, Evergreen Recovery, Pioneer Services, you know, Providence. Anybody that'll talk to me, I'll work with. You know, and so in the last, well, at the beginning of the pandemic, I never took a day off because the addiction was so much greater. I saw people dying than I did on the street anywhere else. And so I would pick them up wherever they were at, and that included, you know, Island County, Chehalis. I'd take them wherever I could find a detox center that would take them. And so Courage to Change, we actually have been around for a while. We had initially just ran housing and took people from our houses to detox and treatment when they needed it if they relapsed in the house. But it kind of evolved from there to where we saw a need where it was getting worse and worse. And the fentanyl deaths, you know, we'll call them poisonings because that's what they are. And they're fentanyl poisonings. It's not overdose, you know, because it takes such a little amount to kill someone. And so anyway, we started picking people up wherever they were at. And due to Facebook and a number of other people that I know in the program of recovery and different 12-step programs, and no matter where they get clean, I don't care, but you know, the word got out that we were working with and what we were doing. And so I started getting calls from all the other agencies and everybody wanting help. And so we just decided to open Courage to Change Recovery Services. And we opened that in 2019. And so what we would do is, no matter where they would go, I'd go pick them up out of the woods in Marysville a lot, right there off of 4th Avenue. Yeah. I mean, I had a number of guys that the police were standing right there with them with their tickets saying, I got to go to treatment or go to jail. And I go, well, jump in, let's go. You know, but so I admired them for that. But along that path, I was seeing a lot of people die. And since 2019, we've gotten over 200 people into detox and treatment. 47% of those people that have entered our program have gone through Nick's Place, which is our clean and sober interment shelter, where we've saw a need that I'd get them out of detox, and what do I do with them? But most clean and sober houses aren't going to take them. They got no money. They've got nothing. So just on a wing and a prayer, we opened up Nick's Place, and so we could get people out of detox. We could bring them to Nick's Place, to our shelter, hold them there, keep them accountable by UAs, you know, and keep them clean. I'm not saying people haven't relapsed, but when they do, they're out. You know, they get one chance there. And now if they go to detox, again, I'll take them to detox. I never shoot the wounded, so I'll take them back to detox, help them get clean and sober, and then come back to the shelter, as long as they didn't bring drugs in there. If they bring drugs in the shelter, or they use inside the shelter, you are banned for life. You know, that's the way it is. And there has to be accountability. When I got clean and sober, I was looking at 5 years in prison. You know, and I don't know if Conrad Thompson was my probation officer, which is, believe it or not, one of my best friends today, but he held me accountable. And he said to me, because he threw my rap sheet down in front of me, and he said, you'll be back. You know, and I just thought in my head, I got a resentment right then. Oh, no, I'm not. You know, and so that kind of started my path. But anyway, what he didn't know is I was ready, I was done. But with that being said, I love the addict and I hate the disease. You know, because these guys, when they do get clean and sober, a lot of them become productive members of society. I mean, I have a number of guys that I started out with 20 years ago. They're millionaires today. And I wish she was here. She was going to be, but a very dear friend of mine that started a T-shirt company and, you know, sells T-shirts and shirts and apparel all over the world and is a millionaire today. And but that's what sobriety can do for us. And so, you know, I'm not a millionaire, by the way. Not even close. But I love to see them on that path, and I help people get that way. And what Courage to Change has done is allows me to do that. And Alyssa in the front row and Chrissy are my two go-to girls. If without them, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. You know, and we're all a volunteer-based group. I have 78 volunteers that we can call from. And, you know, they do tremendous things. I mean, our office, we're building a new office on Hewitt, so you guys can all come down there and see that 2912 Hewitt Avenue here next month, where it's going to be kind of a new requirement, I believe, where I want the addicts to come to us. If they want help, the word's out on the street. Everybody's got my cards. I mean, we do the homeless dinners at the First Presbyterian Church on Wednesdays, and I hand out cards and talk to the guys there. And like they were talking about psychosis, and something else I want to touch on before that. The psychosis I've seen in the last 2 years has gone through the roof. Yeah. And I believe the reason is the way they're cooking the drugs. And I just heard a process the other day, the way they were doing it was with oven cleaner. Can you imagine smoking oven cleaner? I mean, that's what they're making it with. And it's very interesting. You know, he told me the whole process, and I'm not going to share that, but I've had people in my van who are perfectly normal, like anybody sitting here on this panel. And like a snap of a fingers will turn, and I had a lady grab the steering wheel one time on the freeway, and I picked her up in Everett on Broadway, and we were headed to Bellingham, detox, and she just snapped. Was like the devil, and I'm not kidding you. She was a methamphetamines user, and I don't know if she was coming down or what, but just went off. And I guess the scary thing is I'd been dealing with this woman for a couple of years, and she had progressively gotten worse. In the last, 6 months, had gone into psychosis, where she was paranoid schizophrenic and just out of her mind. And anyway, luckily there was a state patrolman that was on the on-ramp and saw me slam on my brakes in the middle of the freeway and pull off, and he was right there. And it took 4 officers to hold her down, and she was just a little tiny thing, but she was out of it. So I've seen this level of psychosis, and I hope the doc talks more about that, but the treatment centers, and what we need is more detox centers. Yeah. They're full. I bet they are all full tonight. I called before I came in here, and because I have volunteers, and I post that on our volunteer page a lot, when their detox centers have spaces where we can put them. But, no, I'm jumping all over, but the detox centers that we have now are awesome, but they don't keep them long enough. Fentanyl is so much worse than heroin was. Heroin was a 7-day detox, right? Fentanyl is 28 days minimum in detox. And, our insurance companies won't pay for that. They'll pay for, they're detoxing from heroin. And so we're seeing this over and over and over again, and I've got pictures. Everybody I take to detox, and I won't share those with anybody, but they're for my private records, but I take pictures of those people that are in the car. So if they do get clean and sober down the road, they've got a picture of what they look like when they, when they weren't. And, but anyway, we really need to work on that. Legislation on making the insurance companies, if they're going to provide insurance in Washington State, to have those detox centers instead of. Now, I can take them to treatment, and this is 3, 4, 5 times, right? But they, you know, getting them seamlessly from detox to treatment is another story, you know, because the detox centers are overfull. The treatment centers are, you know, overfull and understaffed, and so are the detox centers. We can't get people to come to work. Right. And, you know, it's just been a nightmare, you know, in the last 2 years. And I've seen it go from really bad to, you know, a little bit better, right? But it's still not enough. And, you know, my goal is just to help those people that call and want help. And that's what our nonprofit does. And, you know, hopefully with our office and, you know, I get calls from all over. We just partnered with a travel agency because I get people from Alaska, I get people from California, from all over the, you know, United States that need to get here, and they have partnered with us that they will pay for, you know, plane tickets wherever they are to bring them to us so we can help them, which is like huge for me, you know, because a lot of times I get calls from all over and can't help those people because there's no way to get them here. So those kind of things have been awesome for us, and we're all, like I said, we're just a little nonprofit doing what we can do, you know, but without the people behind me, like I said, Christy works a full-time job, Alyssa's got 4 kids, I mean, you know, but they're always there when I call, you know. And so, anyway, I want to say, you know, thanks, Janelle, for having me here. And if you want to donate, you know,
well,
talk to one of these girls down here
yeah.
afterwards. But, you know, just, you know, thanks for having me. Yeah.
It's our pleasure, Mike. So that brings me to our last guest on the panel, but after listening to Mike, it kind of brings up some questions. So Randy Hayden here runs several small businesses in our county, from construction to building management, and currently, though, he serves on the Snohomish County Chemical Dependency and Mental Health Advisory Board. And I'm sure people have kind of a lot of questions. When I think of that, I know that we've had different percentages of sales tax go to the county for treatment, and the newest one for homelessness, and for housing. And I know you're super passionate about recovery. One of the things I keep wondering about, and I've kind of seen this in some of the legislation, or when people can apply for grants or whatnot, it seems that if you are offering any kind of shelter or housing in order to get the grant of the tax money that we pay, it has to be low or no barrier. So if you could share first a little bit about your passion and how you kind of came into being involved with this, and then help us maybe understand about how much money Snohomish County has for these issues.
Okay, well, I got involved in this board. On the board I'm on now, I was placed there in 2015. I first got involved in a different board. You know, my passion has been helping those with drug addictions. I myself, you know, I go back 45 years ago, I was a drunk, drug addict, homeless. So I've been there. I know what it does to families. I know the feeling of hopelessness. So I really felt, as someone who's gone through that and have come out, that I really need to help people because I know how it feels to be there. So the first board I got on was the Alcohol and Other Drugs Advisory Board. Now you must remember, these are advisory boards. We give advice to the county councilman and to Dave Summers, but it's just advice. They're at free will to do what they want with this money, which at times they have done, and it's upset the board, but it is just advice. So I was on that board for 3 years. In 3 years, I was made chair, which then put me on the Mental Health Chemical Dependency Board, which is known as the 1% of 1% board. In 2008, the voters in Snohomish County passed a levy that took 1% of every penny that went to this board, which sounds like a small amount, but right now it's totaling roughly about $26 million a year. So it's a fairly substantial amount. And as Janelle had said, they just passed basically the same levy for housing. So we will be seeing another $26 million going to housing from the housing board also. A lot of the money we've spent over the last years has been on the housing aspect. My real hope is that we can now, with the housing board that's focused on housing, that we can spend our money efficiently on treating and not housing. As Janelle was saying, you know, the whole low barrier, no barrier housing has turned into a big issue. I've been on this board since 2015, and I've seen a complete change in the mentality of the county, the mentality of the people involved in these different boards, but not just the boards, the people that are on the businesses that are helping. You know, the whole mentality has changed. You know that we need to, we need to not focus on the drug issue, because that'll go away if we just give them what they want. So it's become very frustrating for me. Yesterday we had an emergency, not an emergency, but a special meeting, because we had $833,000 that was going to be appropriated. We had two different entities apply for these funds through our RSPs. One was Housing Hope, which is a good outfit. They've done a lot of good things. There's some positive stuff there. I did kind of got a little upset. There was a city council or a county council meeting about a month ago when they passed the issue on the two hotels that they bought. And there was a lot of comment. Everyone got 3 minutes. There was probably 2 hours worth of comments. But one of the gals from Housing Hope, who's a board member for Housing Hope, said that the UW has done studies, and their statistics claim that only 15% of homeless people are drug addicted. So, and then we had then we had another person come in who works on one of these boards, you know, for, it wasn't Housing Hope, but another one involved through this process, who said, you know, the real problem is homelessness. If we just give these people's homes, they'll stop the drugs, because that's why they're using drugs, is because they're homeless. So I've seen in the last 7 years, it's a complete change in the mentality on how we need to help these people. So it's very frustrating. So going back to this RSVP, or RSP, $833,000, the Hands Up organization, which is a great organization, and it does what they say. It's a hand up, not a handout, because they make people actually do something. They were asking for $600,000 in a housing grant. Housing Hope wanted the whole lump sum, $833,000. Bottom line is the board gave it all to Housing Hope. So we're seeing just this mentality of, you know, drugs aren't the problem. Everything's the problem. We'll let them use drugs, and when we solve the problem, then they'll stop using drugs. And it's become very frustrating as someone who's been there. I've been out in the battlefield. A lot of these people making the decisions have never crossed the, you know, crossed the line. They've never got their hands dirty. So it's been very frustrating.
Really sorry to hear that. It seems that it would only be fair to just have the grants, and if an organization is kind of higher barrier and one's lower barrier, treat them the same, and then maybe we could have some healthy comparisons instead of just making these assumptions. And
you would think, but I think, and I had this conversation with Johnny a couple of weeks ago, and it's, you know, the addiction it's probably $1 billion industry just here in Washington, just here in Washington. And if we solve the problem, a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. So just something to think about. I'm not pointing blame, but it's just, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that's what we're doing here.
It sounds like we need some accountability of our elected officials.
Well, and
who are spending this money. So thank you for everybody for answering my questions, but I think there's probably some audience questions that are going to be maybe more interesting. I'm an engineer, but we have some 3x5 note cards and got a microphone out here. So I think we had a lot of people turn some in. If we don't quite get to a question that covers what you have in mind, then maybe we can open it up a little bit more. So
what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the questions that those of you wrote down here, since you didn't put your names. It's okay.
yeah.
And then if any of you have additional questions, just raise your hand or flag me down, and I'll hand the mic off to you. First question for our wonderful panel here today. What is a fair budget balance between healing resources with human resources and the criminal justice system? Good question.
That's a good question. It's a fair balance.
I'll take a crack at it.
Yeah, let's see. You're the executive.
We try to balance that in Marysville, and I think you lead with compassion, and you use the consequence end of it, the criminal justice system, the penal facilities, when compassion just doesn't work. And I guess what that looks like on the ground for our folks is, like I said, it's not just go out and meet someone one time and it's like, hey, you've got 30 minutes to get into treatment. No, it's several weeks of building a relationship so they get comfortable with the officer and the social worker, the mental health worker, or the drug professional. And so that's usually a multi-week process for us, probably anywhere from 6, 7 to 9, 10 meetings, whether that's going out for a bite to eat or, you know, sitting down at a coffee shop or whatever. And by that time, let's say you're 5, 6 weeks in, hey, we've met with you 9 or 10 times. I mean, we gotta figure this out because you've got a little bit of a rap sheet here that there's, you know, we'd like to put that aside and just get you into treatment and forget that. But we're not going to allow you to do both. You can't ignore the rap sheet and continue to do drugs and steal and all that. So I guess if I were to put it in a nutshell, lead with compassion, give it some time, and then if that doesn't work, you're round in with the tough love part of it.
Can I take a stab at that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Good. So we have a very large budget in Snohomish County government-wide, law and justice, and that's not just the sheriff's office, that's the courts, the prosecutor's office, roughly about 72%. It's a large percentage. A lot of people don't like that. I understand. But what I don't think everybody understands is what Snohomish County is. We're a different county. I consider us, I don't use the progressive word a whole lot, but I do when it comes to where we're at, when it comes to public safety and what we're talking about here tonight. If you're not aware, the reason I'm explaining this is because some of this goes to the funding. Human services is very large. That would be the social service component of Snohomish County government. I would be the law enforcement component. We do more services in Snohomish County, I'm born and raised here, than I've ever seen, and I've been working the streets here for 25 years. We have a building up in the same property as the jail. It's called the Carnegie Building, which is what we call a one-stop shop for services. It's a good thing. We should have that. We should fund that. Where if you need help with addiction services, you need help with just getting an ID card, something as simple as that, but is a huge deal to function in our society, you can get help there. We went so far as we have and I'm not taking credit for this was the former sheriff, so I want to be clear, but it's a great idea. We have a diversion center. It's part of the jail, but it's not jail. It's a person who is willing to go there. We found a gap in services for law enforcement when we found someone in crisis or an addiction crisis that was willing to get help. You can't get a bed right away. It's as Mike said, it's just not going to happen. And so they came up with a diversion center in partnership in county government to where we can house somebody with a medic on site. There are rules they have to follow. And for up to about a 2-week period, we will house them in Snohomish County till we can get them a bed. Law enforcement and human services in Snohomish County is doing that. I got to talk about our jail real quick. I know when people hear about the Snohomish County Jail, and maybe it was back in the day, I don't know, but it's not 4 concrete walls and we throw you in there and we forget about it. Our jail is, and I'm comfortable saying this now after 2.5 years in Sirius, we're the most progressive jail in the state of Washington. We have medical services, we have nurses on site. They're in a medical tent before they even come into our building to make sure they are okay. We can start treatment services in the Snohomish County Jail. We have mental health professionals who are outstanding people, by the way, who are just there to help our inmates with their mental health. We have a dentist who comes in once a week. Is that a small thing? Probably so, but really important when you're actually trying to care for the human being that's in your custody. That's a big deal. And so I know that the question was on funding and what should be the right balance. I'm not saying we're there yet in Snohomish County, but we're doing a lot of good things, and this will be very brief. Right now, Snohomish County is undergoing a study. I don't really like studies. I think you just get in there and do the work, get your hands dirty, like someone said, but the county government wanted to fund another study. They took in, it's called the Center for Court Innovation. 2 young ladies from New York City, Brooklyn, came in to see what we're about, not the sheriff's office, countywide, as far as specifically to the courts. We have drug court, we have mental health court, we want to start a veterans court. County did a good thing, I think, where they said, time out. Let's just get this all under one umbrella and see if we can pull this off to make it better for the person who needs help. So these 2 young ladies come in. It was my turn as the sheriff. I had to sit down with them. I shouldn't say had to. I had the pleasure to sit down with them and talk about the sheriff's office and what we do. I talked about what we do in the street level. Then we got to our jail. I described our jail similar to what I just told you guys, all the things which I think we are doing, which is good. And then I said, by the way, do you have an extra hour or so? We can walk across the street and you can see firsthand what we're doing. And they had the time. We did it. We took them all the way through the jail. They could not believe what we are doing in Snohomish County when it comes to not just throwing someone in jail and hoping they get better. And there has to be some willingness there. I'll acknowledge that up front. But we have things in place to help people. Not only that, when they are released from our custody anymore, it used to just be midnight, 2 a.m., streets of Everett. Everett City cannot stand that, by the way, because they come from all over the county and then released in Everett. We don't do that anymore. We've timed it differently. Not only that, if the person is willing, we do what we call a warm handoff. We are great partners with Ideal Options. I won't go down that road because that's a longer story right now about medical assisted treatment. But we will partner them with either Ideal Options, one of our social workers, another city social worker, if that's who they've been working with. So when they are released, they don't get on that bus and are partnering with someone who's smoking M30 or blues or right there and get back into that game. If they're willing, we will take them. So is it perfect in Snohomish County? No, but I wanted everybody in this room that took the time out of their busy schedules to come here. We are doing some good things. I think we are being fairly innovative. There's not any one answer to this, but we have some good stuff going on in Snohomish County.
Can I segue off that real quick? You know, about 6 months back, there was a meeting, I believe it was in DC, where they brought in people from all over the nation to talk about what they're doing to handle the drug problem. And Snohomish County was acknowledged for doing, you know, some outstanding stuff here. They are taking a look nationwide at what's going on here.
Anybody else want to add to that question? All right. Let's hear some more.
All right. Next question is, tough question. How do we motivate the government to provide detox centers and mental health treatment centers for the poor? Good question.
Say that last part, for the what?
For the poor.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll start. I mean, I think on a state legislative standpoint and how we do our budgeting. I mean, personally, I would be advocating for longer detox time and a longer treatment time. And, you know, as we were talking about, a lot of the facilities were covered by the Apple Care or the Medicaid type payments. But then when we don't pay and then we lose our providers, I think that is just an absolute tragedy. So I'd like to see on a statewide level, making sure that we increase those funding towards that, because I think fundamentally, then hopefully we would save money on the law enforcement side once we help people and get folks back in. But I think the model has to be minimum probably 90 days to 6 months of treatment is the research that I've been finding. Would anybody else agree or want to weigh in on that one?
I agree, but we need help at the state level for that. We really do. You don't want cops don't need more authority to take people off the street. If you're a danger to yourself or a danger to others, we can commit somebody, but then they go to the hospital where they should be, and the professionals in the medical profession make that decision. But there are huge gaps in the system at the state level. Again, I'm not coming before you as the sheriff. We don't need any more authority. I think we're okay. It's exactly what Janelle just said. After that happens, how long are we going to keep people? There is not an appetite, at least in this state right now, to keep people much longer. I mean, we're seeing people back out in hours that are in true mental health crisis. And usually it's a co-diagnosis almost all the time anymore with mental health. So we need help at the state level, I think, and this state needs to decide if they're going to get serious about mental health or treatment or not.
Good question.
Our mental health system in the state of Washington, if I could be so bold to say, is in shambles.
This next question, I think, would be a good, because you guys have already touched on this so well this evening, but I'll relay the question since someone took the time to write it down. And I think it's maybe a good summary of what you guys have all talked about. So someone asked, what are some viable alternatives to corrections to deal with addiction? And I think we heard about some of that tonight, but maybe summarize that down the line.
Well, I'd like to handle that if you don't mind. So this is something that I've thought about for a long time. And I'm sure most of you saw I think it was Como 4 that did Seattle is Dying. Our system needs to be completely revamped. We have a very flawed system. People are afraid to spend the money, but we're throwing money away by not spending money. What needs to happen is we no longer give criminals the option, jail or treatment. Criminals need to go to jail, period. Okay? In jail, then they're given the option to treatment. Those that want the treatment will get it there in jail, but treatment cannot stop in jail. They need housing when they get out. They need training. They need to learn how to become a functioning member of society. They need self-worth, because that's the only way addictions can be kicked is through self-worth.
Thank you.
Can I say something on
Yeah, let's hear
it?
from
I just wanted to throw an example out of how broken it is. So about a month ago, we had a young man at the shelter who I'd had at Smoky Point Behavioral. I'd had him at Providence Hospital. Tried to get him through Cascade. Couldn't get any help for him. And he called the police on himself at the shelter and said he was a harm to himself and was going to hurt himself. So the Everett police showed up and they talked to him. And they said, no, he's fine. Just let him sleep and he'll be fine. He went in the bathroom and stabbed himself in the neck, right? He wanted help. And so now we got an ambulance, comes to the shelter. Now he's getting help that he needs. But it took that extreme for them to do something, and all this happened within less than a 24-hour period from when I tried to get him to Smoky Point. They told me that when he did his assessment, that he was fine, he just needed to go to outpatient because they didn't want to spend the money to put him into inpatient or whatever it might have been. It's all about money these days, period, right? And so Providence was the same thing. He went in, he checked in, they gave him a couple of medications, told him he was good, and to go see his mental health provider. Well, make a long story short, he ended up spending some time at Providence. He got his medication straightened out, so they say. I think the big problem is, and maybe the doctor would agree, they're using the same medications that they've used for 50 years. And, they get them to a point where they're, on an even keel, but they're really not helping. A lot of these guys that have been drug addicted that I see have it takes months and months and months before they quit hearing the voices. You know, the methamphetamines and the drugs that are out there today are putting a psychosis in these guys that lasts for good years. And Sheriff of Fortney and I have a very dear friend that heard voices for 18 months before she started to get better. And I see it over and over and over again, you know. And so the mental health system, I don't know what we're going to do to fix it. I don't know how to fix it. I don't have the answers. But, you know, I'm hoping with all of us could, you know, can write letters to your legislators. I don't know how we're going to change it. But, you know, something needs to be changed. When somebody asks for help, there's no question, you know. And, I mean, granted, we do see those that are on the street that go into the hospitals and say, oh, you know, I'm harm to myself. And they use the system. They've learned how to do it, right? But there are those extreme cases like the young man that was at the shelter, you know, that was begging for help and couldn't get it. So, I don't know. That's just, you know, my side of what I see. So,
Thanks.
He lived.
You lived. Next question.
Excellent. Next question. How can public taxpayer money be used more effectively to help solve this issue? So someone's asking, how can we streamline the money we're putting into the system or that we are continuing to put into the system?
We're right in the thick of it, whether it's your sheriff, your police chief, your mayor, county council members, city council members. That's one of the problems, I think, with our system is, and this isn't meant to be a detraction, it's just the reality, but those that are in Olympia or Washington, D.C. are not having, nobody's calling them every day to talk about the person passed out in front of the Starbucks that they tried to, their daughter went into work at 6 a.m. in the morning. I get those kind of calls, you know. Sheriff Fortney gets those kind of calls. And so we need them to listen to people on the front lines of this battle. And that can include those in the private sector, in the social services sector, those that are dealing with these situations every single day. We spend more time in city government on these issues than anything else. Wow. And, you know, everybody at this table does. And so I think the advice and the resources need to be put at the local level. Sheriff Fortney described some of the great things going on in Snohomish County with the Carnegie Center, the resource centers. That's not a ton of money compared to the millions they're pumping into this stuff at different levels of government, and you just don't even know where it goes. So I would say push the money down to where the problems are, and you know, we're the ones most motivated to solve it and solve it quickly so we can get on with other functions of government.
Well said.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote this question has excellent handwriting. The best of all the people that have written so far. Very clean. We have no youth detox. What is the plan? There is a desperate need, and they double underline desperate, just to let you know. It's a very good question.
Well, actually, I believe we do. We opened up at the old Denny Juvenile Center there. We opened up 2 different bedded facilities, 2 16-bed facilities, and one of those is for youth.
Okay. I'd like to probably add on that there's, you know, there is some legislation that gets in the way, that if a teenager wants to get treatment, they can't necessarily self-refer, and maybe if they're in like a difficult situation with their parents, or maybe the parents are addicts and abusive, sometimes the children don't want to go to the authorities because they're afraid Child Protective Services will be called. And so there's probably some legislation. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really want parental rights to be top, but in the case of a child who really wants to get some detox and treatment, I think they should be empowered to do that without fear of their parents or the fear of getting their parents in trouble, and that might open up a little more availability for the youth.
Yeah. So Cocoon House has also done quite a bit with the youth over the last 5 years. They've gotten several big grants. I know they bought a hotel building in Everett. So Cocoon Houses, and their focus is just on youth.
I don't know who asked that question, but I want to emphasize, I guess, the question and the answer. I just went through this just a few weeks ago. Again, a community contact called me because of that exact scenario. They had a juvenile in Washington State that was addicted to fentanyl, agreeing to treatment, and he needed to detox. He called me, Adam, can you help? We can't find a bed anywhere. And of course, I absolutely dropped what I'm doing. I'm trying to use my contacts within Snohomish County, and the answer that came back to me wasn't pretty. It was, there are no beds available in the state of Washington. Thank the good Lord that this person that had called me, because we touched base later in the afternoon, they had found one in the private sector. I think it was in Bellingham, if I remember right. But he had checked the entire state of Washington. And you can duplicate that when it comes to the juvenile mental health system in this state. There is not a lot of help for kids, and the need is drastic right now.
This is the shambles I was talking about.
There you go.
All right, so we've finished the pre-written questions before the evening started. Now we're going to go on to the section of raising your hand, and I shall pass along. But we're starting with the first guy behind me. This gentleman here waved me down and had a question.
Hi, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Matt. These are my pants. Thank you. My wife doesn't like them, but I'm an Edmonds Libertarian, and we have a sheriff, we've got public servants, we've got people in the executive, I'm here, a doctor, civil servants. We're missing a lawyer, I guess, but I'm particularly wondering, what are a person's civil rights when you're addicted to drugs and you're committing crimes? And like if the drugs are a man-made problem, like an oil spill is a man-made problem, you know, it's illegal to arrest a seal that's covered in oil, and it's illegal to go and pet the birds, it's illegal to touch the whales and those sort of things, but they're covered in oil. We just don't feed them, we take care of the oil. Are people who are in these conditions, are they wards of the state effectively? And then is anybody thinking of it in that regard to say, you're not capable on your own of doing this, you are in danger, and effectively we have to help you? And I guess that's the question. So what are the powers and what are the civil rights?
I would love to take that question. Matt, that was fantastic, and you nailed it out of the park.
Look at his enthusiasm.
I love the pants comment too. That was awesome. But so I know where you're going as a libertarian, because I've talked to libertarians, and while I agree a lot with what libertarians think and how they view freedom, and this, I get it. I don't always agree when it comes to drug use, because I've personally seen the impacts, but your question goes to the heart of what I think we're talking about. You can drive down to Airport 99 and see it. Your question was, what rights do we have? Maybe as law enforcement, not rights as law enforcement, authority do we have? What rights does the citizen have? I would tell you right now in the state of Washington, and I'm absolutely certain of this, they have every right to walk around Airport 99 high out of their mind right now. Do I think that's good for society? No, I don't. I just don't. I've seen it. Maybe the doctor can probably see as much or more than I have in his tenure. I don't think it's a good thing. But it's not us that need to decide where we want to go. It's all of us in this room, and probably the state government, if we want to allow, or if the state government would take more authority, and it would mean rights from an individual, which is a really big deal. You know, you said, are they wards of the state? Absolutely not. They are. They are not right now. They can walk the streets. It's basically legal to smoke fentanyl, and you might see that in a video we have coming up at the end of this presentation. So it's a great question. I wish I had a better answer for you, Matt, but it is the question of the hour, is if this state is going to get serious or not. And again, I tend to be more towards libertarian. If I'm minding my own business, I just want government out of my life, leave me alone. That's where I stand for the most part. What I have seen in the 25 years in Snohomish County, and really the last couple with fentanyl, it's inhumane just leaving somebody out there in that state, just in my opinion.
So I think the question is it a drug addiction, or is it a mental health problem? You know, it used to be, it was up till, I don't know, about 30 years ago, it wasn't too complicated to have someone committed for a mental health problem. Unfortunately, it's almost impossible nowadays to do that. And I think, as much as I hate to see, because that's a power that can be abused, there's always pros and cons to everything. So, but it's, you look at drug addiction and mental health, and it goes hand in hand. So.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you for holding such an informative, safe, and civil forum like this. In 2018, I was part of an organization that held a similar forum with Seattle Police Officers Guild, Family Policy Center, John Curley at UW Kane Hall, and we were viciously attacked and shut down by Antifa terrorists, which included University of Washington professors, who one of them came and spat at one of our guests on the stage. So that just shows you the sort of the difference between Snohomish and King County, right? So you just come up the road a little bit, and you can find some more civility up here. My question is both a comment and a question, because I feel like there is an elephant in the room that Dr. Jantz just touched on about the southern border. And I guess this question is probably more directed to the sheriff. It's my understanding that we are in the grips of basically narco-terrorist turf war right now between some Central American cartels up here in this area. And that's where the fentanyl and all of this is coming from. And so why are we not hearing about this? What's happening in that regard? And is it a much bigger problem than the public even knows? I mean, I understand that there have been a couple of shootings at the Emerald Hotel here on Aurora in Edmonds. These are some of the places, and in Everett, that it's drifting down from Everett down into the Edmonds area is what my understanding is. And I just wonder if you could sort of just give us a little public service announcement about that. But really, why are we not also talking about what we're doing to go after these people that are coming into our country and filling our streets and the tsunami of poison? Why are we not talking about that?
We need to.
Yeah. It's not anything to do with race. I'm sorry.
No. So it's designed to kill, and it's coming across to kill. Mm-hmm. And it will continue until we address the issues of where it's coming from and through the border. And we haven't mentioned yet human trafficking that's associated with this as well. So there's a whole lot of mix of things that get wrapped into this. So this is why we're seeing addiction grow at the phenomenal rate it is, and it's designed to kill and destroy. So we got to deal with it at the source. We've got to stop the flow, for one thing. Mm-hmm. It's coming in more, not less. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, it seems that that's being ignored a little bit. Yeah. Why?
Well, let's not get political.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I need to touch on that.
Yeah,
I sympathize with you. Again, this week, there was another 17-year-old overdose death. He overdosed in July. It hit my desk this week. We have, I don't know if you know this or not, we have the Regional Drug Task Force, which is made up of numerous police agencies in Snohomish County. The head task force commander is an appointee of mine as the elected sheriff, and so I put Commander Jay Baines in there about 18 months ago. It is the drug task force who would handle the investigations of the like that you're talking about. I don't know about a turf war. I don't know about individual shootings or anything like that. But if it's not a popular topic to discuss, but there are cartels running fentanyl in Snohomish County, mm-hmm. and it would happen way more often than you would ever think. Yep. I've been really kind of I've worked the streets for a long time, and I've been surprised to the extent and to the complicated investigations that the drug task force gets involved in. So we're not doing everything perfect in that area, but I will tell you this, in Snohomish County, it is getting addressed. Some of their investigations can go on for 18 months. It takes a long time. Very complicated. I don't know how much I should disclose or not, but they do follows all over the country with these investigations, literally all over the country. So there is a lot of work going on. To be honest, we don't talk about it a whole lot, but you are right that it is here. The cartels do operate here. They tend to mind their own business within their own little community, but we do get into them every so often, yes. They used to have the gang name attached to them. They no longer do. It's just, listen, we don't want to get into the recruitment and retention crisis in public safety, but everybody's struggling for bodies right now, for people to come to work, private sector and public sector. They don't address the gang issues. They will get involved if they need to. I mentioned the young man who passed on fentanyl. The reason I did that is because it was the commander who I called to look into that, because we thought we figured out who sold him that. And with staffing at critical levels in public safety, we do have a unit that addresses these issues in Snohomish County.
Yeah. I want to touch on the fact that, yeah, good work to help stop the drug cartels and the drug task force being able to be fully staffed and manned was completely undermined by the bad legislation that came out of Olympia. And it's super important that we get good people there to correct those bad laws so that we can start to see some improved recruitment. I mean, I think it's okay to mention, because this is all, it's all interconnected, that if we lose good law enforcement officers to other states, then that leaves us more vulnerable. It leaves the streets wide open, and you know, just essentially having the drugs legalized because of the Blake decision and the fact that the legislatures didn't close up a couple words to make sure that if it's in your pants, it's yours, is just tragic, because that leaves the market wide open for those people to come in and sell their wares.
Your response there toward the end kind of touches on my question, and that is that we have a whole group of people. You were talking about the mentality towards drug treatment has changed, where they just want to provide housing. And I can't tell you how many times I've listened to John Carlson on the radio talking about homelessness and how he'll have an activist on there, a repeated activist say, we just need to provide housing. If we just provide housing, you know, and so forth. And so they don't want to treat the drugs, they don't want to, but the majority of the people that have this mentality are in the majority. You folks here in the minority, you really want to make a difference. You want to do it the right way it should be done. How are you going to deal with this ideology, this mentality where these people have no experience of what it is to be a drug addict? You have to hit rock bottom, and you have to, like we have Travis Berge is a really classic example, just repeatedly arrested, and Pete Holmes released him, and then when in the end he went on to a drug-induced rampage, killed his girlfriend, and then drowned in Nevada liquid. I mean, how are you going to deal with these people that are the minority who are with this ideology of let's do it this way, which is the wrong way of doing it? What's your plan on that and dealing with those people?
Well, I think the question's around the housing first mentality. Is that, yeah, and well, the first time I heard of the housing first mentality was probably 5 or 6 years ago when it kind of hit Snohomish County, maybe 7 years ago even. And there was a Utah model, and it was all the rage, and everybody thought, wow, let's try this. And back then it was like, well, you know, who knows? And then if you do some reading on the Utah model, nobody talks about the Utah model anymore. Why is that? Because it didn't work.
Didn't work.
Well, it's kind of recycled now, like a lot of bad ideas do, and it's kind of coming back in as the rage again, because people are fumbling around for a compassionate way to deal with this. And so let's just stick them in a hotel or a warehouse and hope that they somehow come to their senses and want services. I think we've all explained this Blake decision. Most of the individuals that are suffering from these addictions will not voluntarily go into service. They don't, if we walk out of this building and see somebody lying in the street over here and go up and say, hey, I can get you into services tonight, there's almost a zero chance they're going to say, yeah, let's do it. You know, when they make that choice is when they're presented with some alternatives, and one's a really bad alternative like jail or something else, and then there's another door that says, okay, I could actually get a second crack at life and all that. And usually it's when they're in a frame of mind to make that decision, so maybe it takes a 3-day detox or something like that. And if I could maybe share one story, I mean, take this with a grain of salt. I've read about it. I don't know. I like to speak on things that I more know that are true, but I read about when I was kind of studying our embedded social worker program, I did read a story about the federal government back at the end of the Vietnam War had something, I think it was named Operation Golden Stream or something, kind of a comical title when you think about it. But the idea was we had some of our military personnel that was addicted to opium in Vietnam when the war was coming to a close. And the federal government said, hey, we aren't bringing these folks home to deal with it on our streets. And so if you got an opium problem, we're going to send doctors and folks like some of our good experts here over there. And when you can pass the test for X amount of time, you can come home. Well, guess what? Those guys were in that treatment program like that because who wanted to stay in Vietnam a day longer than you had to? Well, that just, to me, that just illustrates that it can be done with proper motivation, whether it's incarceration or something like that, but there has to be something to present these folks with a reason to make the right call. And you've got to get them into a position where they can think a little bit. So you got to get them detoxed or do something. But, and that's why I think the Housing First model is a real struggle for me, because it doesn't present that alternative. It says, we'll give you what you want and still allow you to shoot up in there or do whatever it is you're doing. And then we'll hope that we can wrap some services in there and you'll somehow come to your senses and choose those services. And yeah. Well, I mean,
it's not working. If you go to cities like Seattle and a few other,
it just keeps getting worse and worse.
It's not working. Yeah.
And the squeaky wheel gets oiled.
It's really going to take all of us speaking up.
Yes,
Because it's obvious, I mean, there's kind of a common, I mean, the theme lately has just been common sense. It's, you know, the way we're doing it isn't working, and we need the common sense. Do we have any other questions?
Oh, yes, we do. I'm working
Okay.
my way around the room. I see some of
gosh.
you getting a little anxious. Don't worry.
It's kind of
I'm
our
coming for you.
Donahue moments.
Well, just a moment ago, Randy told the doctor that it's, let's not get political. Well, that's where the solution lies to this. This state has been run, and you all know it, by one party for way too long. They don't buy the tough love like Mayor Naring said. They don't like that program. Well, until we get, I believe we need to flip the state Senate, we need 3 seats to take over? 4. We need 4 seats to take over, and Janelle is running for one of them. And that's what we have to do. We've got to get people in the legislature who will come up with common sense ideas, which we're hearing them tonight. I mean, Seattle Times and the Herald would never cover this stuff and talk like this, but that is the answer. And these people, there's not a one of them up on the panel that's happy with the way the system is working right now. The governor found $46 million for the state employees today in their contract negotiation, and that $1,000 for 46,000. It's a bonus to take the shot. It was in the paper this morning. So if they got $46 million for bonuses to take the jab, then we ought to be able to come up with enough bucks to get these people the help that they need.
Thank you.
I'm working around here because we have some people that have been waiting over here.
Thank you all for being here and, you know, talking about these topics. I work in the trenches with these people and oversee a detox. And so the talk about the insurances has really got my blood boiling. We can't keep these people. We have to get authorizations to keep these people. We shouldn't have to do that. Somebody mentioned up there that they can go to inpatient treatment over and over and over. We shouldn't be kicking these people out mid-fentanyl detox to the street or to a treatment center. They're not ready. They are not physically capable or mentally capable of making a decision to stay in treatment. That's one soapbox for me. The other is the mental health side of things. it's not a requirement in treatment facilities, SUD treatment facilities, to require mental health services. I have never in my life, I have been in recovery for 24 years, I have yet to meet an addict who does not need mental health services. It needs to be together for everyone and offered for everybody. So.
Thank you.
So it isn't just the insurance companies. Medicaid shorts the facilities also. They have a set amount they pay. I know back, this was probably 7 years ago, the facility in Linwood was looking at having to close because a lot of the people coming in, is that where you work? So, yeah, and we had to grant some money to keep the doors open there because I believe, if I remember right, they were losing like $80 per patient a day from the shortfall for Medicaid to what it actually costs to do. So there's a lot of problems there in funding.
It's a lot more than $80.
Well, this was 7 years ago, 7, 8 years ago.
Providers, you know, to become a credentialed provider for Medicaid is a complete nightmare. So it's just a whole problem all the way around. There are barriers everywhere that are in our way as providers to help these people. Yeah. And including short staff. Like everybody is 4 months to get credentialed Medicaid provider.
Wow.
Next question here.
Thank you for that.
Great points here.
Well, thank you so much for Janelle putting this together. There should be a lot more people here, and just watching all the hands go up with people that have been affected by drugs in their family. Well, I'm one of them as well. It's my nephew, and now I've been listening to this, and one of the first things I might do, he lives in Yakima. I think I might try and, but I'm just the aunt at this case, but I'm just trying to help my brother and my sister-in-law. What would you suggest? He's living on the streets, high on fentanyl, 27 years old. What do they do first? My brother and his mother and father. It's such a hopeless feeling. What would you suggest that they do first in helping this guy? Because they don't even know where he is. They know he's somewhere in Yakima. That's about it.
Yeah, give my number.
Mike will find him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I have driven to Spokane before.
Yeah.
What would I suggest? How a family member helps another family member? Yes. Give them my number. And if my son is a heroin addict. My daughter, there was nothing I could do or say myself, but other than lead by example, right? And until they're ready, there was nothing I could do. And then it was just give them another number, because a family member, in my opinion, can't help another family member. You know, so it has to be an outside entity. Somebody comes in and helps. Or, you know, let them share my experience, strength, and hope with them, and hopefully they hear something. You know, that's about all I can say to that. You know, and I know it's like a question I get all the time. I get family members, moms, dads, you know, brothers, sisters, whoever call, you know, oh, I want to get my brother help. And I go, well, have him call me, you know, when he's ready. You know, and that's about all you can do. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's really a fact.
It's heart-wrenching. It's heart-wrenching.
Next question over here.
Hi, thank you guys for all coming here and giving us all information. It's really good information. I've been in recovery too for a long time, so I hear this kind of stuff all the time. And you can't really help anybody unless they want help. And you can't make them want help. You can't force them to get help. They have to come to a point to where they just are sick and tired of being sick and tired. And they want to do something different. If there's I don't know if there's Nar-Anon, there's Al-Anon, but I know there's Nar-Anon for family members, I would suggest you go to that. Because that's going to teach you how to take care of you and not them.
Yeah, that was my suggestion.
And then the other thing I wanted to say is I live right in the area that Sheriff was talking about. and right over there by 99 and Home Depot, that's me. And I, tonight, on the way here, had to ask a person to leave in a non-trespassing area that was going to camp out there. And I do that almost regularly. A couple of Fridays ago, I went to go throw some garbage out in the dumpster in my complex that I live in. And I threw the garbage in the dumpster, and I hear, "Hey!" And I'm like, "What?" I look over, there's a guy sitting in the dumpster. Oh. And all he cares about is his piece of foil, his lighter, and his drugs. That's all he cares about. I said, "You have to leave." He said, yeah, I'm going. I said, "No, you have to leave now. You can't sleep in the dumpster." But he had to go smoke his drugs before he got out of the dumpster. He got out of the dumpster, and he said, "This is my life, and I don't care about it." And I said, "I know it's your life, and you should care about it because you're a mess." But anyways, aside from that fact, I mean, that area is like that all the time. And so is there anything, this is a complex problem. We're all talking about a complex problem that not one thing is going to fix. If I had a solution, and my idea would be to get a big center, like where they ripped down the big Kmart there on Highway 99. If we put up a big center that had housing, had mental health, had drug and alcohol addiction, had counseling, training for jobs, and housing, and kept those people all there until they could be a productive member of society, that would be my thing. But, so saying that, I just wonder, is there anything that we can do as citizens when I have stuff like that happen in my neighborhood? I even tried calling the non-emergent number tonight to report the people that are around the area. And that number is busy all the time. And there's just, and I even stopped by and had a Everett police officer, and I said, there's activity going on. He just shakes his head, yes. Because they all know that, but they can't do anything about it because there's not enough manpower, So what can we do as citizens? Is there anything that we can do to cooperate, to help out the law enforcement and everybody else so that we can be a part of the solution instead of not doing anything and just being idle and watching it go on?
That's a really good question.
I'll take that since it's my area. You're doing a good job. I actually know exactly what you're talking about. I deal with it all the time, like the mayor said. This is just first and foremost, it's on our plates all of the time. Don't call the non-emergency line. I get in trouble sometimes when I say that. If you have something to report in progress, or even if the guy walked away, please call 911. We do. Feel like 911 is don't feel like that. No. That's how we know if something's going on. It's not guaranteed. The non-emergency line will get addressed, but it's not guaranteed to get addressed right away. Call 911. Let us know what's going on. I can tell you this. I know the exact neighborhood. I know the dumpster you're talking about. We are trying so incredibly hard in that area, but we're trying. I'll say one positive thing. We just made a huge arrest in that area just about 3 days ago. We got the main dealer out of there who's supplying the fentanyl to those people, and he had $524,000 in cash in his apartment on 4th Avenue West.
That's a lot of stolen
It's crazy.
goods.
And a lot of stolen property. It's all combined. It's all part of one issue. You're doing the right thing. Your neighborhood is very vocal. You guys are getting through to the exec's office. Look, we've been dealing with this for several years. We've already partnered with the Everett Police Department. One side of the street is Everett jurisdiction, one is county. So now we partner. We got on the same page. We all got in a room and talked about it. I can tell you this, the other departments in county government has never been interested in this issue until about the last 3 weeks, to be honest with you. Now they're very interested. I'll take their help. I don't care if they're late to the game. I'm okay with that. I want them on board as well because we're better when we partner together. I am not promising you an overnight fix. I am telling you, since I came in 2.5 years ago, we have arrested and arrested. We have done operations down there. We have spent a lot of time, money, and resources. I don't want to admit this. It's not working, to be honest with you. You know that. You live down there. And so we've got to come up. That's why we're here talking tonight. That's why this panel's here. That's why you're here. We're trying to come up with something that does work. There's a lot of good hearts in this audience. I can see that. And I'll tell you, one of the main things we're struggling with down there right now is the entity, and I don't know who they are, that comes out and feeds at least 2 nights a week right on the side of the street. I'm all for feeding the hungry. I'm all for it. But you got to organize it a little bit. It has to be somewhere that can kind of, where you can deal with the garbage that comes with it. The businesses down there are fed up. They're angry because it's been years and years. I don't blame them. So that's one of the issues. We have partnered with the health district on that. They don't want to touch it. Do they have a constitutional right to stand there on the sidewalk? Yeah, they pretty much do. But the feeding people on the side of the street doesn't help either. I hear that from the, what's that? That's, I don't know. They're there to feed them food. Are there other stuff going on? Absolutely, yes. So,
Yeah.
we are trying in that area very hard.
I think we've got time for just one more question, and then I've got kind of a nice surprise. Are there any more? Or you want to wrap it up?
I can do this one, and then you can let me know. You've been studying the government for a while, Janelle, now, because where you are in position. Being public safety, being like a baton passing, where do you see in Snohomish County the gaps so that it stops the revolving door? Where are the gaps? And the whole panel sees these, so.
Yeah. Well, the biggest one, I think, is, the legislation that needs to be fixed, for sure, because, we talked about the Blake decision. I don't know if you heard that part, but, we're going to talk a little bit too. Having pursuit back is going to be really important, and just first changing that legislation, and then probably looking at how we're funding things, and so that we can give the tools back to law enforcement to keep us safe. That's kind of it. I guess one of the other gaps, I think, is that, because I look at kind of, system-wide things, and I know that maybe you could tell us on the diversion center, but a lot of the backlog in hospitals and facilities, we're still backed up because of some of the COVID protocols that are still in place. So some beds are, I think, are only, like some facilities at 50% capacity, or certain, even if it's just follow-on care in our hospitals, we're getting backed up in the hospitals right now, and so then there's inadequate care, like in the ER and that kind of thing. So it's time to just get back to normal so we can use the facilities at maximum capacity. I think would make a big difference for everybody, and lifting some of the requirements with vaccine mandates so we can get some of the people who've lost their jobs back into play so that we can get back to normal.
Yep.
Hi, I have the privilege of working in a treatment facility, and I've been able to partner with the embedded program in Marysville. Thank you very much for that, and the diversion center as well. Excellent sources, as well as Mike Kersey himself. And just like the other individual shared, it is incredibly frustrating that the Medicaid plan does not allow for detox to be longer, and it is also frustrating that when a client does want to get better, but they are facing mental health struggles or long-term, whether it be incarceration or substance use treatment, that they just need to be with us a little bit longer. What I deal with right now is housing, and I'm not quite sure, I don't have an understanding of this, and maybe somebody on the panel could help me get it a little bit better. So mental health court and drug court, for example, in King County, they do help with housing. Unfortunately, that housing has taken a turn. But why is it that the Snohomish County does not have that as an option for their individuals that are enrolled in mental health court or drug court? Why is housing not an option?
Well, I think that's probably the biggest flaw. They just bought 2 hotels, and they're going to fill them full of drug addicts. Do you not think that maybe a better use of those 2 hotels would be after treatment to then bring them into stable housing where they're going to have the follow-up care after the fact? Because I think that's the biggest flaw we're seeing right now is we're giving people treatment and then we're throwing them out to the wolves. They don't have the proper follow-up care that they need.
So we're running out of time for questions.
Yeah, we are.
So there's a couple more people I know that raised their hands over here as I made my way around the room and back. So I encourage you to go up and speak to the panelists at the end here and ask your questions to them, because I think that's very important. And anyone who wants to listen to that should join that as well too.
I gotta say, I love how invigorated everybody is. Thank you, everybody, for coming here, and thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for asking the really good questions. Thank you to this awesome, awesome panel. I really appreciate you being here. In sort of just a conclusion, we do have a really special video. I've got to say, Sheriff Fortney's been doing so much for us and for our county, and so have a number of leaders. And he just debuted this video yesterday that he put together this morning. Oh, wow. So fresh off the presses for you guys, okay? So if you can bear with us for just a couple more minutes, I think this will be really worthwhile for you to see. Adam, do you want to set us up a little bit, describe what it's about?
I'll try to be super brief. So this video started actually over 4 months ago. There's a lot of elected mayors in this video, a lot of police chiefs in Snohomish County, and all the way over to Chelan County. And there's a specific reason for that. The reason that I did this is I get out in the community a lot. It's very important to me as an elected official that I'm available, that I get out and talk to people, and I take that to heart. And when we talk about public safety, and I think Janelle mentioned the pursuit question, which is difficult to talk about in this setting, and then the Blake decision, which we talked a lot about tonight, which is a good thing. When I'm out in the community, when I explain to them the difficulty that law enforcement is having in 2022, I had to pick up their jaw off the floor because they can't believe the conditions that we're working under state law. And then they talked about, well, what are you doing about it? And we discussed that. One of the things that came to mind is this was a cross-section of people, not political, just working folks. Everybody, they care about their property, they care about their stuff, and they are aghast that if we get behind a vehicle in the state of Washington of somebody that just burglarized your home, we literally, state law mandates that we watch them drive away. We can't even attempt to catch them. You guys, that's just not okay with me. The other thing is there's a safety issue between both the community and law enforcement. Is people, they're brazen right now, and I mean that truly. They are wrecking patrol cars, they're smashing into us. You'll see a Marysville case, you'll see a county case on body cam. It's not just me saying it, and there's footage all over the state. We tried to compile something. There is a somewhat political message at the end where we just ask for the community to be involved. That's all the politics involved. I didn't want it to be political, and I wanted it to be bipartisan. It is super important for me in Snohomish County that that was the case. And so you will see both R's and D's in this video with the same message about public safety. So I'll stop talking and you can view it for yourself. Police, open the door. Police. Open the door. Open the door. Hey. Open the door. Nope, he's putting in gear. He's going. Don't do it. And he's gone. Oh, he's crashed. He's crashed. Nope, he's gone. Yeah, are you all right?
I'm good.
Okay.
In 2021, the Washington State Legislature banned most police pursuits unless it was for a violent crime or sex offense. While this might sound reasonable, the reality is that public safety decreases as criminals become more brazen, knowing the police cannot pursue them to enforce the law.
My fellow Snohomish County mayors and I share a deep and growing concern for the safety of our communities due to the tide of rising crime we are seeing.
In other news tonight, the city of Spokane, Spokane County, and the state of Washington all seeing a big spike in car thefts right now.
Vehicle thefts increased 88% for the first 3 months of this year.
Here in Bellingham, the numbers are astronomical. Statewide, in the first 2 months of last year, there were about 4,500 car thefts. This year, nearly double that, believed to be a new record.
I have never seen criminals as emboldened as they are now.
The Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs point to a state Supreme Court decision that decriminalized the possession of small amounts of drugs and law enforcement reform laws that forbid police from pursuing someone in a stolen car.
Our mayors, law enforcement, and the community asked for help, and the legislature made the specific decision to continue to allow for blatant disregard of the law.
Law enforcement's deeply concerned that some policing reforms may have had unintended outcomes.
We are witnessing actual crimes like the ramming of police cars as criminals attempt to get away. This is both dangerous for law enforcement and for the public at large.
The reality is, criminally minded people are taking advantage of the new laws and creating more victims as a result.
And with the recent Blake decision at the state Supreme Court and the lack of a fix by the state legislature, we now have a scenario where it's very difficult to get individuals who are struggling with a drug addiction into treatment.
We're seeing a rise in drug addiction. We're seeing a rise in fentanyl overdoses, and not just overdoses, but deaths.
The Blake decision makes it practically impossible for our officers to enforce the law.
The direction of public safety in the state of Washington is leading to a mass exodus of police officers in nearly every jurisdiction.
The criminal justice system needs action and support by all.
Laws preventing police pursuits make arresting these car thieves a challenge, and low staffing numbers mean resources are already spread thin.
If current laws stay the same, we're going to continue to see a crisis in public safety staffing.
Fewer police officers means less ability to provide justice for victims. They need to know we are here for them when they call.
Chelan County was one of the first jurisdictions adversely affected by this new legislation. Our suspect was able to steal a school bus and simply drive away from us. Instead of apprehension earlier on in his crime spree, he was allowed to commit further crimes and destroy his house, also belonging to his spouse and children. This was completely preventable.
There are some criminal suspects that need to be apprehended while their crimes are being committed to prevent further victimization to our communities.
We need to take a balanced approach to this public safety issue.
No one wants more pursuits, which are inherently dangerous. But current law has created an atmosphere of defying the law even on simple traffic stops.
There is a victim behind every one of these crimes, and they need us to take action so their voices can be heard.
Victims of auto theft are too often those who can least afford it. With older cars, with fewer anti-theft systems, with less insurance coverage, and with greater impacts on their lives.
Recently, the state of New Jersey reversed its prohibition on police chases, precisely because of the same increases in crime and that the perception that fleeing the police was an encouragement to commit crimes.
It's important to evaluate these laws to see what is working and what is not.
We are not advocating for more pursuits. We are advocating for more police authority to engage in pursuits so the criminal action is not given a free pass.
As your local elected officials and leaders in public safety,
we're asking for your help.
We're asking for your help.
We're asking for your help.
We are asking for your help in getting our community
on a better path for public safety.
Our government works best when we
as a community participate in the process, and the time is now.
And the time is now.
And the time is now. The time is now.
Please reach out to your local representatives
and urge them to change the current laws
in support of public safety and providing justice for victims.
Please join us in advocating for safer communities.